Hello everyone. To start this off, before we get into the intro, I want to say the content today is whitewashing and cultural appropriation. Today we could offend some people, and we mean no offense by it, for we try to look at all viewpoints. So viewer discretion is advised for those who might find themselves easily offended. Thank you. My name is Joe Hoban, and this week we're talking about whitewashing. Now, for those of you who don't know what whitewashing is, I'll break it down for you. Whitewashing is essentially when you have a non-ethnic role in a movie and you cast it to a white person rather than that ethnic background. So a good example of this I'll use is The Gods of Egypt. The Gods of Egypt was a movie where it was very heavily whitewashed, where there was not a lot of Egyptian roles or characters or actors really in it. It was mostly just a white movie. Now, we've seen this a lot of times through actual battle movies where another example of this would be Heimdall in Thor. African-American role there. But some would say that that would be reverse whitewashing because of the exact opposite effect. And that's what we're going to talk about today. For some, they will say then, if an actor is good enough, he can act any role out. And we saw this before with an African-American playing the part Red in The Shawshank Redemption. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't bring up because you never really hear whitewashing going the other way. But in a role like Ghost in the Shell with Scarlett Johansson, it got a lot of backlash because it is such an iconic film rather than admiring her talent. So the question is whitewashing bad? Well, now when it comes to that, the numbers don't lie. From a report released in 2015 by USC's Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism, 73% of people in movies were actually white. And this is compared to the 60% of white people in the American census, shows that movies are 13% more white than actual reality. Now, I'm not saying to you, the audience, that we should have our movies be exact to reality and stuff. They're movies. It's not reality. When you go to a movie, you're there to escape. However, when you look at the actual numbers, though, for the Latin Americans, there is 4 times less Latin Americans in film, which is ridiculous. And it's not just about race also. It's also about gender and it's about sexuality also. When it comes to females, females are terribly not using speaking roles that much. From the same research by USC's Annenberg School for Communication, they found that males outweigh the women in speaking roles from 2.3 to 1, which is ridiculous when we're in a country where there's more women than men. Now, as I was just mentioning, when it comes to the LGBT group, for that 100 movie span that was in 2014, where they picked 100 movies and they analyzed it, what they found was that there was only 19 gay characters in the movies. 16 of them were white, which is 84% for those keeping track back at home. Now, at the end of the day, when it comes to whitewashing, Hollywood's going to do this. Hollywood is going to cast the people who are the big names, who get the people who come to the box office. But I think we should be looking at it a little bit more. I think we should be looking at roles a little bit more. You wouldn't want to go see a movie on someone like, I'll use a name like Gandhi. You wouldn't want to see a movie about Gandhi who was played by, a plain white actor and stuff. It takes away from the effect of it. Now, when we come back later from break, we're going to actually have a conversation about this in more detail. I'll let you guys know my own opinion, but I want to hear theirs. Later on tonight, we're going to have a good friend of mine, Vienna Ainsworth, who is an actress here at SUNY Plattsburgh, and also my friend Taiwan Grant, who was here last week. So you don't want to miss that. Stay tuned, and from me to you, thank you.
Me te tengo que decir de tigre que a mí me tienes harta. El peso que yo soy su cuerito. Me llaman a las 4 de la mañana, me toman mensaje, mira. Oye, pero a cada rato. Oye, te tengo que decir de este muchacho que me tiene a mi harta. Ni siquiera tengo su nombre safe. Me llama cada rato, me está mandando mensajes que yo te hacía.
Ay, pero qué dramática.
¿Dramática cómo? Dramática no tu madrina, chico. Te estoy diciendo que no es problema mía. Cada rato te metiendo en tu problema.
Estás viendo PSTV, Canal Charter 194, Canal Campus 10.1.
Tune into PSTV, Campus Channel 10.1 and Charter Cable 194. Hello, my name is Joe Hoban and welcome to Focal Point. Today our focal point is whitewashing and pop culture. Now I am joined by my guest today, Vienna Ainsworth, and once again Taiwan Grant. Now guys, as we know, whitewashing is sweeping across media and pop culture, mostly anime. A lot of anime just ruined for that. But my first question is, do you think that a casting director should try to cast people who are that character's race and origin before they look at others?
Oh, yes, definitely. If only just to stay true to the character, but then also because then we avoid whitewashing. So, like, if the character is of a specific race, definitely look for that. I don't even know why they would try to hire outside of that.
Yeah, I do agree with Vienna. With dealing with stories, there's like, I feel like there's a certain like method to madness when people choose like the characters they have for the story, like for the, well, based around the background. Like if they were born in like Harlem, they would most likely be like African American or some sort, like to deal with like, well, dealing with where they come from in like Harlem. When what I'm trying to say is when come from like certain areas, the race I feel does play like a huge role in it to like stay true to like certain narratives to tell like the proper story. Feel, well, not proper, like most natural story. If you're dealing with like nonfiction, even fiction in some cases where you're gonna have like something to base your character upon, I feel like race is like a huge factor in that.
I would agree. I would agree that, especially when it comes to nonfiction works, you want to keep it as accurate as possible. Although it's very interesting that, like, I bring that up because Hamilton, pretty sure is a whole multi-racial Broadway play right now, and that is not exactly historical accurate. But do you think there should be laws and regulations around getting more diverse people in those roles?
I think that could be a little tricky in Hollywood, especially because then you'd have to come up with a set number. So say 12% of all cast has to be this, or 12% has to be this, or certain things like that. And it might not work for everything. And then they could limit it and say, well, if we only need 3% of African American actors in our show, then we're only going to do 3%, even if normally without that they would have done maybe half the cast.
Yeah, making percentages film specific would like benefit rather than it being like a criteria, because I'm not a fan of like forced messages at most points. I feel like it interferes with the story like the director is trying to tell. Now when like we have films like, that one like Egyptian film like that came out 2 years ago was like majority white cast.
I think it was Prince? No.
It was something.
No, it was
I cannot remember the name of it.
It was something with the gods of Egypt.
Yeah, and it was like majority white. That, I'm not sure if they chose talent or whatever. You're not telling me that there wasn't enough black talent for like a movie like that, or African American, or something closer to the narrative than what was shown.
I 100% agree right there.
Hopefully the movie was good. I can't vouch.
I'm pretty sure it tanked in the box office. But now, I bring up early in the show, the idea of kind of like the reverse whitewashing, when you have an ethnic role playing in a white role. So we've seen this multiple times throughout history, where we had Morgan Freeman in The Shawshank Redemption. His character was originally Irish. Idris Elba in Thor, Norse mythology and stuff, but another African American character. Do you feel that it's a one-way road when it comes to us putting whitewashing on certain things?
I don't necessarily know how I feel about that. I feel like it can be a two-way streak, because if they try to force it, then it could just feel wrong for us, like, oh, they're trying to, oh, look, see, we're a good film company. We hire all ethnic backgrounds. And then especially if you're changing something from the writer's point of view, like let's say in the case of Shawshank Redemption, if the writer approves of it, because they can always go back and think, oh, maybe the character should have been more like this, or, maybe that's not a big part of the character. But I think overall, for the most part, Hollywood should stick with what the original writers said, because that's how they always mess up book to movie adaptions.
Very true.
That's a slippery subject, though. Like, I know there's a lot of movies and books that, like, not get, like, per se lost in translation, but, like, want to tell the same story a different way for, like, many of the comic book movies, like Marvel and all. And I noticed, like, a lot of, like, race switches dealing with Marvel comics.
Oh, yes.
With the dealing to the movies. So I wouldn't say it's, like, a one-way street with whitewashing. I would say it's majority, but not, like, fixed in that sense.
I agree. And I think as long as it's not a big part of the character, then it isn't as big a problem. But let's say this character's entire background was that, they grew up in Ireland and that's their whole thing. And then you have them played by, say, someone of a Latino background.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make any sense.
Exactly. And one of my last questions on this topic before we go to break. If you were denied a role due to your not being that character's race and stuff, would you feel aggravated or angry about that?
No, in fact, I personally, coming from someone that loves theater, wouldn't even audition for a character of a different role because I feel like it's not my place. If the character is written as or supposed to be portrayed as someone of a different descent, like African American, I wouldn't think that it was my place to play that character.
I know myself. If I wanted to play like for a character, I'd probably like try my best regardless of the race. But if I was to get denied, I feel like I would be like a little understanding of the narrative, which I like signed up for at first. Like if it was in Hong Kong, I wouldn't be as likely. No matter how hard I practice my kung fu, maybe I'll get like a backup role before I end up
now
stunt double.
You brought up a good point. I know that you do theater here at the college. For Rocky, when it was going on, for a role like that where it's not just about race but it's about sexuality and stuff, do you feel like for that part of what's the main character?
Dr. Frankenfurter.
Dr. Frankenfurter. That character should be played by someone of that nature.
That can also be a very slippery slope and a kind of tricky subject, but I think it should be. If only because then the person has more of a background for the character so they can put more into the character. While actors do our best, it's very hard to play what we don't know.
Very true. And guys, when we get back, we're going to talk about just cultural appropriation, a little bit more of this.
All right.
And you're not going to want to miss that when we come back. So stay tuned. Thank you guys for being here for the first part, and a lot more to come. Thank you.
I want to welcome you to yet another version of After Hours here on PSTV.
And welcome to another installment of Talk Nerdy to Me.
You look excited. I'm freezing.
I'm Lauren Weiss.
And I'm Kyle Bryant. Let's take a look at today's top stories.
2 minutes of the finest in news that you need to know about.
And now it's time for a PSTV News special report.
Scoring scores! With 2 seconds left!
Plattsburgh Hoop Troop is a recreational club where you can either come to learn how to hoop, you can come for hoop fitness, or you can just come to hang out with your friends if you already know how to hoop. It was something I started as a sophomore because I love to hula hoop. Our open flow sessions take place from Friday 2 to 3 and Tuesdays 6:30 to 8. Watch PSTV on channel 10.1 or Charter 194.
Whoa! Oh, PSTV's on.
PSTV, it do the things and stuff. There's shows on it that you can watch.
everyone. Before we get back to the interview, we want to spread this message. When it comes to whitewashing in media culture, there comes diversity, and with diversity comes racism and people getting made fun of for their sexuality. Here at Focal Point, we are against discrimination. We are all on the same planet. We all share the same color blood. We were born the same from nothing, and something will happen where one day we will all die the same. But there are people in this country that live life and get discriminated against, and whether it be getting turned down for a role in a movie or getting profanity screamed at you on the side of the street, or the worst things. You should not have to tolerate any of that. And if you're a student here at SUNY Plattsburgh and you are feeling that you don't belong because you are diverse and you are not feeling welcome, go down to the Diversity Task Force. It is comprised of faculty, staff, and community leaders, and they are actively engaged in the development and vision of diversity and social justice here at SUNY Plattsburgh. Unsure about going there or what to bring up, if you go to the website plattsburgh.edu/plattslife/diversity and scroll down, you'll find a link to the campus diversity plan, and there you'll find all the stuff you need to know and all the people who can help you. We are all the same, we are all equals, and no one should be discriminated against. It's a hard world as already as it is, but like acting, when you get denied the role, you just gotta keep up at it. Be safe, folks. We're going to cut to commercial. We will be right back. Thank you.
Te tengo que decir desde tigre que a mí me tienes harta. El peso que ese es su cuerito. Me llaman a las 4 de la mañana, me toman mensaje, mira. Oye, pero a cada rato. Oye, te tengo que decir, este muchacho que me tiene a mi harta. Ni siquiera tengo su nombre safe. Me llama cada rato, me está mandando mensajes que yo te hacía.
Ay, pero qué dramática.
¿Dramática cómo? Dramática no tu madrina, chico. Te estoy diciendo que no es problema mía. Cada rato te me tienes tu problema.
Estás viendo PSTV, Canal Charter 194, Canal Campus 10.1.
Tune into PSTV, Campus Channel 10.1 and Charter Cable 194. Hello and welcome back to Focal Point. My name is Joe Hoban, and I'm still here with my guests today, Vienna Ainsworth and Taiwan Grant. Welcome back, guys. Now, where we left off, we were just talking about casting in general, but I want to talk more about the movies now and stuff, because we do see, as we mentioned before, when it comes to anime, very different American adaptations of anime movies that don't really go so well. Examples being the Ghost in the Shell movie with Scarlett Johansson, the Death Note movie, and I could do a whole bunch more. I'm not even going to mention Avatar The Last Airbender because that was pretty bad. Now, do you think it's all right for one culture to adapt another culture's works without actually calling it an adaptation and stuff, just by taking the source material?
I think if you're not following it properly, if you're just kind of going off of, it kind of seems like it's this, so we're going to do it like this, you'll have to put some kind of disclaimer in there like, look, we didn't really do all our research, so this is probably not how this culture actually acts like this. Because that's how a lot of people get misguided. They don't know things. They think, oh, well, I saw it in a movie, so it has to be true, and it's usually very, very wrong.
Yeah, I think you hit on the nose with the question. Like, if you're going straight far from the material, I think it's fair to call it like an adaptation or whatever before you like take it 2 steps further. Maybe directors will be afraid of people being like, oh, this ain't the original story, I won't see it. But I don't think it will run into that problem often. Like I said, Marvel is still like redoing a lot of their stories. Civil War was supposed to have way more heroes than it should have been. It was kind of an adaptation, well, not kind of, it's a good adaptation that I would go see again. In fact, I've seen it like 3 times the opening day, just because.
You saw, hold on, you saw Avengers: Infinity War.
Civil
War. Three times in one day.
3 times.
That's insane.
The second time I almost fell asleep, but it was.
Now, do you think there's a difference between influence and appropriation, though?
Yeah.
Because I'll give you my view first and stuff. I feel that for appropriation, it has to be going down the other way. So when it comes to like an American taking stuff from any other culture and stuff, right? And doing their own version of it when it's not in the original source material is devaluing the original culture of that aspect. But then when you have it going the other way, so I'm going to keep going back to anime, so I'm going to keep with that.
Yeah.
So America has done many different dubs of animes in the past, right? But Japanese, every once in a while, does an American show in its own form. So like the Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah.
Why is that not like appropriation of one's culture and stuff, but more of an adaptation or a different take on it?
Well, because with Powerpuff Girls Z, I think it's called.
Yes.
Yeah.
Z or X, one of the letters.
I'm proud that I know that. I ain't gonna be on. But with that one, I didn't watch most of it, but it doesn't look like they were aiming to recreate. It looked like they were aiming like add their own like spin on it. Like more, I feel like with that, like you said, it would be like influence because like they were trying to add on to it, like give respect to what was already there, and then like, oh hey, here's something that would be pretty cool if it happened, and just let their ideas flow from there. I'm doing with that.
I agree with Taiwan on this one. There is definitely a difference between the two, and I think it's important that they distinguish that difference and that when making the source material, they kind of realize, or the new material, they realize what they're doing. That, look, we're not going to base it off of this. We're just kind of taking some of these ideas and going along with it. Because so many times if they think they're basing it off of something, in particular, like, we love this show, so we want to make this show, but in this setting, and they can completely mess it up.
I agree with that, and I feel it very interesting, like you say, like, that they mess it up, because I think there's only one time where I ever saw an American movie and stuff taken from Japan that has actually worked. Actually, no, multiple times. Horror movies like Ring and what's the other classic one? How many out here?
I don't remember.
Ring and
Oh, One Missed Call?
One Missed Call, that was one, and not important. But Magnificent Seven.
Did not see.
Magnificent Seven is a cool story, actually. It's America readapted it as a cowboy story when it was originally the Samurai Seven, dating way back in the first days of the actual film. And to me, I always thought it was kind of funny how they remade the American adaptation of the actual Japanese film the other year. So it was like a remake of a remastered. And I always find it just interesting, that conversation about taking a story and then reappropriating it. But I also want to add in that, where do you think parodies are in this?
Parodies would definitely be something that's taken a little less seriously. When you think you're doing an adaptation or a new reinterpretation of something, you're following it more seriously, whereas a parody is more just making fun of something that already exists, and they try a little less hard to make sure no one knows they're ripping it off. With adaptations, they usually try to hide the fact that they borrowed or used someone else's ideas, but with parodies, they're like, yeah, this is a ripoff of this movie. Look how funny it is. Look at all the mistakes we can point out in it.
Spaceballs and rings a bell.
Yeah, I would still put it more on the adaptation side, even though it's like poking fun of rather than paying respects, just because like there's still the acknowledgement that like, oh hey, this existed. Although we might question like some of the choices, like why is your beard as big as the 7 Seas and you can still run as fast as Sonic? Just a random example I thought of. Like small things like that that we could pay respect to. I feel like that's on the adaptation side.
Now, one of my last questions that I want to ask is, do you think we're getting too soft and too sensitive with the stuff that we're calling, we're shooting the gun a little bit early on some things that don't actually mean it and stuff?
Ooh, that's that.
Well, I did. Dang. What was it? It was oh, they were making How to Train Your Dragon 3, I think. And they had a female dragon with a male dragon, and it was like, oh, don't push heterosexuality on animals and something of the sort. I felt like an early gunshot to me. just because it was, well, one, we don't know the plot, so we don't know how it could end it out. And even though it was like people were panicking because it was what, Pride Month at that moment where they released the.
Really?
It was.
Yeah, it was.
I do believe
Pride
it was in June.
Yeah, and then people were like, oh, not on Pride Month, and then people was like firing the gun early. I personally didn't think it like deserved it that early, at least not without a trailer or something. That was like the first instance that came to my mind. As for like currently, if we're shooting a gun too early, I don't know enough to say that right now, but based on the How to Train Your Dragon incident,
now,
a second look couldn't hurt.
I want to shift over to you because I know you're a big Harry Potter fan. The whole thing that happened with was it a snake in the movie?
It was a snake, yes. It was a Burmese python.
Yeah, so Burmese python being an Asian snake and stuff, and people were mad that they were changing it around. What were your thoughts on the whole incident?
Honestly, that whole thing annoyed me quite a bit. Because one of the biggest things that people point out is that in the Harry Potter movies, it's a very white cast. There's very few diversities. So J.K. Rowling listened to them and created a new character. And it's kind of hard to just pull a character out of nowhere that, oh look, now they suddenly exist. So she kind of gave a pre-existing character a bit of a bigger backstory. And I don't think that it's pushing anything because it was a Burmese python, which is an Asian snake. So yes, they hired a Korean woman instead of someone from the natural area, but I still think she's giving them what they asked for and they're still mad about it. Especially a lot of times in Hollywood, as nasty as it is, it goes who you know, your talent, and then whether you're appropriate for the role or not. So I hate to say close enough's good enough, but they tried, they found an actor that they thought was good for the role, and I think it is important that people respect that. It can be a tricky balancing beam, though, because we still have a long way to go with diversity in pulp culture. But I think if we start shooting down anyone that comes up with anything that's not absolutely perfect, it will kind of push Hollywood more the other way and make people think, well, then why are we trying?
And with that, everyone, I just want to say thank you to my guests once again, VNN Ty, for coming on, talking about this. And for all the people out there, when it comes to cultural appropriation, all that stuff, always cite the source material and always be respectful of the content at hand. My name is Joe Hoban. This has been Focal Point, and we'll see you next time. Stay safe, North Country. Thank you.